Good morning and welcome to the fourth edition of Talk About Teens. I'm Clarissa Constantine, founder of the Parent Tween Connection, and I'm joined by Deborah Davis and Elisabeth Stitt. We have put together this series of workshops together. We are all veteran educators in different aspects of education, and Deborah's out in Connecticut, I'm in Colorado, and Elisabeth is in California, and we all have clearly an array of geographical backgrounds, professional backgrounds, and we're excited to have this workshop for you. Now that we have grades from the first quarter, we can take that information and we can continue to help our students. So some of what we're going to be tackling today is actually based on what we've covered in prior workshops. So you can absolutely find those through the Parent Tween Connection, as well as through Deborah's and Elisabeth's businesses, which we'll hit as we go along. But if you have questions about like, oh, what do we talk about goal setting? Well, we talked about goal setting in our Rock Back to School workshop back in July. So just know that there's more information even beyond today. So in anticipation of today's workshop, we reached out to folks saying, hey, what questions do you have? What are you running into with your kiddos? And so some of the questions that we received and some questions that we've just heard over the years look like this. Well, what if there's a problem actually going on? How do I keep my kid from feeling badly about her less than stellar grades, perhaps? But what if my kiddo's grades are good, but he's actually just super anxious and super stressed all of the time? What if things are good? Should I still bother having a parent-teacher conference? What's the value in it if my kid's doing well? How do I keep my kiddos organized, especially in the middle school realm? This is something I know Elisabeth is passionate about. And then on my end, with the college admissions process, where do I even begin? For a lot of families, mom or dad may not have gone through a traditional quote unquote four-year collegiate experience. Maybe they didn't go to college here in this country. And even if they did, it's changed a lot in the last 20 to 30 years. So where do I even begin to support my students? So that's kind of where we're headed today. And we're going to get started with tips focused largely on middle school. But what we find and what Deborah, Elisabeth, and I have found over the course of this year as we've done these workshops together is that we actually all kind of have very similar ideas. So even if your kiddo is in high school, some of the things that Elisabeth talks about that are primarily geared toward middle school kiddos are still very applicable. So why do I keep saying middle school for Elisabeth, middle school for Elisabeth? Well, because in my estimation, Elisabeth is a goddess among mortals because she has dealt with those just like that time when you're like, what happened to my cute, loving, adorable, kind, respectful child? Who is this alien that has taken over my child's body? Elisabeth is a former middle school teacher. She taught in the middle schools for 25 years. She says, first and foremost, I'm a mother and a stepmother. She says, I've been through it all. Diapers, the terrible twos, the crazed teenage years, and even bidding my kids a fond adieu as they head off to college and into their real world. She says she supports parents through her own extensive experience and expertise because she's been there, she's done that, and she really does speak middle schooler. It's quite fascinating. She says, yes, parenting is hard work, but it can also be a ton of fun. So without further ado, we're going to pass it on over to the middle school whisperer, as it were.
Well, thank you for that lovely, lovely introduction. And let me share my screen here and we should be ready to go. All right. So our fourth in our series, in our Talk About Teen series, this is the first quarter check-in. Just going to go over a few simple concepts, but they are so key to making a difference with your kids. If you can hold your child as being in progress, that is going to help alleviate so much of their anxiety. There's an enormous pressure right now for them to be traveling on a straight line towards that college admissions goal. And it's part of the reasons I became a parenting coach was because when I first started teaching, you ask a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it would be like, I want to be the star quarterback. I want to be the rock star. I want to be the Olympian gold medalist. And nobody thought you needed to tell a 12-year-old that none of that was going to happen, probably. We would just go like, yay, that's great. Good for you. Today, you ask a 12-year-old, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I want to major in computer science and minor in business, or minor in business, major in business and minor in computer science. And the weight of the world is sitting on their shoulders. We can help to counteract that. And one of the main ways that we do that is that we don't take each and every data point as the trajectory of where their life is headed. And we let them know life doesn't go that way. Life goes up and down. Sometimes life goes nowhere, nowhere, nowhere. And then all of a sudden things come together. You don't know what it's going to look like. You just keep working, and you are doing great for where you are right now. So when we talk about Carol Dweck's research of having a growth mindset, a few salient points. One is that just explaining to kids about the fact that people have growth mindsets and people have fixed mindsets, and that the fixed mindset says our brain is like a can that we don't know what's in it. And so, it's like we know something's in there, but we're not sure what, but it's limited. As compared to our brain is like a tree that's growing and sprouting and can grow more and more branches and can get denser and denser. Just explaining the potential of growth and how studying and repeating and working lays the neural pathway to make connections. How one of my favorite factoids is that when we have done aerobic exercise, our brain chemicals are primed for making those connections, those academic connections, which is why our athletes tend to do better than our non-athletes. So in helping them have a growth mindset, we want to support them not just with what's the assignment in front of them. We want to support them with the idea of how their brain is growing and how all this hard work they're putting in is building to something. And this is so important for the middle school, because since grades don't count during middle school, kids look at it and they're like, why should I do all this hard work? I don't get anything from it. And if you're just looking at grades, that's true. You don't get anything from it, especially if you're going from a public middle school into a public high school. You could have pretty much all D's and F's, and they're still going to put you into the high school. And kids know it, and that is very demotivating. So when we talk about growth mindset, we talk about connections, we talk about gray matter, and really like having our brain be as complex and dense as possible. That's one of the ways that we can motivate them. The other really salient idea of a growth mindset is how two little words can make a world of difference. And that's yet and still, right? So I have not mastered something yet. I am still working on it. And when we say that to our kids, we are giving them permission to be where they are, knowing that they can keep working on it, right? So like, oh, I got an F on my test. I'm so stupid. This is horrible. I can never do this. Sweetheart, just because you haven't gotten it yet doesn't mean you're not going to get there. You are still working on it. So let's sit down and look at a piece that we can work on. That was just a snapshot in time, that test. It's still there to learn. If you didn't get it today, you're going to get another piece. You'll get another piece tomorrow. So seeing kids as being in progress and having them have a growth mindset, so critical. Okay, part of how we praise kids, part of Carol Dweck's research showed us that when we focus not on their external qualities, like you're so smart, you're smart enough, you can do this, you're a really smart kid, I know you can learn algebra, you're really smart, I know you can write this essay. Instead, we focused on talking about their strategy, their effort, and their improvement. That is what actually supported them having a growth mindset and being in process. So let me just see if I have a slide that talks about, no, okay. Let's take just a moment, especially to talk about strategy, because sometimes people don't realize what does that mean when we support our kids with looking at a strategy. So for example, double checking your work is a strategy. Rereading is a strategy. Writing an outline before you sit down to write your essay is a strategy. Talking through an assignment with your teacher or your friend or your parent is a strategy, a good one for a lot of kids. Note cards that you have and you pull out of your backpack, and when you're driving to school or being driven to school, hopefully you're not driving, you're going through your note cards one last time. I used to have my students memorize poems, and I would have to memorize the poem too. And I would do it stanza by stanza, and I would put a stanza on a note card, and I would carry that puppy around with me wherever I went. And okay, don't tell, but yes, when I was driving, I'd come to a stoplight and I'd pull out my note card and I would read through it one more time, keeping an eye to see if the light was turning green. I would be on my morning walks. I would have my note card. It was a strategy. So helping your kids to identify which strategy they are using, helping them to see how, if they have a strategy for one class, how can it be tweaked to be applied to another class? These are going to help your kids be in progress and to help them adopt and maintain a growth mindset about where they are in school. Same goes for effort and improvement. And one last idea here, and that is that I talk to kids about cotton candy praise versus what I call full corn broad praise. I don't know if you've ever gone to the market and seen that German bread that weighs about a pound. Each piece has so much nutrition and so much value in it. So, oh, you're the best. You're wonderful. You're so smart. You're my clever girl. That's all cotton candy praise, right? You get too much of that and it just makes you feel sick to your stomach. And you don't trust it anymore. So it doesn't count. Over here, we've got the substantive praise that says, this is how I see you being. That is helping you to improve. This is how I see you being. This is the effort that I see, right? So that might sound like practicing that extra 10 minutes every day absolutely has made a difference. You played that piece so much more musically than you did last week, right? That's connecting the work that they did, the effort that they put in, into the mastery or the outcome that they got, which is concrete and they can reproduce it. And that's part of the reason that when we focus on strategy, effort, and improvement, it feels comforting to a child and grounding to a child, because when they hear it, they go, okay, I can do that again. Whereas when you just say, you're the best, you're so smart, that's the most beautiful picture I've ever seen, we may think we're being our kids' cheerleader. And I'm actually a big believer in being our kids' cheerleader. But if we do it with cotton candy, it actually ends up making them feel insecure because they don't know that they can trust it. Whereas when we use full corn broad praise, strategy, effort, and improvement, that gives them something that they can keep doing to keep improving. Okay. With our middle school kids, we are really wanting to help them go from us telling them what to do to them beginning to stand on their own feet with us as their guide, with them analyzing things. And part of the ways that we do that is with our questioning. So I would have a time of the week when you are focusing on the review of the week. And it might be Friday night, and it might be Sunday night, looking into the next week. It might even be the middle of the week, because that's when you guys can all do it. But if you're kind of looking at the last 7 days, what went well, right? In order to sustain energy, it is super important that we are able to identify what's going well. We have to be able to say, like, oh, yes, we are making some improvement, because that, again, is motivating. When we look at the question, what went well this week, we're like, nothing. This week sucked. This week was the worst. It was awful. That does not allow us any energy or space to move forward. What was hard this week? You make it everything. Everything was hard this week. But when you ask, well, what was especially hard? And then you get quiet. And you really let that answer well up. Now, you might be thinking with your academic hat on, Mom, Dad, but it probably will be a social issue that comes up when you say what was especially hard. And that's something that we need to remember when we're thinking about our middle school kids and their academics. And that is that in their brain, literally in their brain, the social emotional piece, the how am I developing, the pulling away from my parent, the establishing my independence, that is taking up big, big, big chunks of their brain energy, big chunks. So when we ask, what was hard this week? That might be the place where they finally communicate with you and let you know in a way. So when we have a designated time for checking in, and when we ask a question and then leave space for the answer, we have a much greater chance that we're going to really get to check in with our kid and really know truly what's going on with them. Okay, what are you going to focus on this coming week? I still remember the feeling of showing up on Monday morning and like English teacher going like, okay, we have an essay due on Friday. Going to science, great, your observation report is due on Friday. Go to history, our test on medieval guilds is on Friday. And just like feeling like it was on, and that the pressure was just tremendous. And that would be so overwhelming to me. I would feel like I can't do any of this. Like I just wanted to shut down. So when our parents support us by saying, you know, what's the one thing you're really going to focus on? What's the one thing that you're going to measure yourself by at the end of the week? That is much more manageable. And Mom, Dad, I want you to know that most of your kids could probably get an A in one class. But the switch from elementary school to middle school, where it's not only you get real grades and all those little points count, and middle school teachers are the worst. Oh my goodness gracious, they are picky. And I totally was in that camp, right? Every spelling mistake, every comma mistake, every mistake in your heading, not just if the heading was wrong, every mistake in your heading, I took off a point. And did I do it because I was the wickedest witch in the West? No, I did it because I wanted you to learn to pay attention to the little stuff now in middle school when the grades didn't really count. Because I didn't want you getting knocked down in high school when it was part of your GPA and part of your next step. So Yep, middle school teachers are going to be that way. That could be overwhelming for kids. You can help them by saying, what's the thing you're going to get right this week? What are you going to focus on? And then when you come to the next week to say what went well this week, you can specifically check in on that focus area. All right, this next question is important because it helps us know. This again is part of the critical thinking, and it's part of stepping into I am an individual who can advocate for myself. And that is, where do you need some help and how are you going to get it? I want that question to sink in because it is a very different way of approaching your child than saying, you know, this math grade is unacceptable and we have got to work to come up. So we are going to sit down and we are going to drill those math facts and we are going to do those problems again. All of that is a big, like, no, no, no. Like any self-respecting middle schooler is just going to be like, go away. And when I ask middle schoolers, what is it that you really want your parent to understand? The most common answer I get is a theme and variation on, I want them to back off. I want them to trust me. I want them to understand basically that I'm not an idiot. And yet we also know that middle school kids can be like total messes. So it's hard for us not to worry. But when we ask this question, where do you need some help? And how are you going to get it? That leaves space for our child to say, well, Mrs. Stitt has office hours Tuesday at lunch. I'm going to make sure that I go talk to her, right? Now they are taking control. I also would love for you to do regular check-ins that focus on adulting skills. And hashtag adulting skills for me are things like, are you doing your laundry? Are you making your bed? Are you doing the family chores? Is the dog getting walked? What are some more sophisticated things that you can be learning at the same time? You know, if a middle school child can write a 1,500 word essay arguing whether or not Botticelli was a Renaissance man and why, a middle school kid can call the plumbing company, analyze who's a good plumber, call the plumber and schedule the plumber. And, you know, they're shouting out the whole time, Mom, is Tuesday at noon okay? But they can do that for you. They can certainly sit and wait for the music to go until somebody comes. There are all kinds of things middle schoolers can do. And it's our job to start giving them those micro experiences so that they're not slammed with it when they get to college. Other non-academic report card questions. Where are you taking ownership and responsibility for your ablutions in your health, right? I am your mother. I should not still be telling you to brush your teeth. That should be automatic. How are you at getting out the door in the morning, right? Like if I'm still waking you up, let's go back and find a strategy for you. Let's go back and find a system. And what about all your sports equipment, your books, the papers, your schedule? How are you doing on that? And then lastly, how are you demonstrating respect in the classroom? How are you making your classmates feel safe, welcome, and supported? In fact, this is my favorite question because I don't want to raise smart, able kids. I want to raise decent human beings. And that's our job as parents. That is our job, to send kids to school who are going to be respectful, kind, and take initiative in doing that. All right, finally, as you go into conferences, just keep in mind, you and, missing apostrophe, you and your scholars teacher want what is best for your child. They may not sound like it. You may run up against, Mrs. Stitt, who's, she's going to take those 1 points off. But just trust that she wants what's best for your child. She may have a different view of how to get there, but trust what's in her heart. Believe me, you're not sitting around teaching middle school. if you don't really believe in your kids and really want to make a difference for them. All right, teachers are people too. Take the moment to say, how are you? How's your year going? And if things get heated, go back to your effective communication techniques, right? Go back to listening. Go back to using I statements to say what your perspective is at home. Try to find win-win solutions that support both the student and the teacher. That's it. If you are a middle school mom and you are watching this, I am super excited to announce my Wear Your Cape and Stand in Your Parenting Power Challenge. It's going to be 5 days. We're going to go through CAPE so that you are confident, authentic, proactive, and enthusiastic so that you can stand in your parenting power. Thank you very much.